Welcome to Come Rain or Shine with Dan Cockerell. This is the show where we explore the power of leadership and culture on your organization's success. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry, and with us, of course, is the retired Vice President of Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World, Dan Cockerell. Hi, Dan.
Hey, Jody. Thanks for being with us today.
Well, I'm thrilled to be back. And I will say, Dan, when you were hosting your show without me, you never had those grand introductions like I just gave you.
It's like the trumpeters welcome me to the forum. It really makes me feel good and important. So I appreciate that, Jody.
That's right. It's kind of like it's like I'm barking for the yak lady or the bearded lady at the carnival. Not that I'm comparing you to a bearded lady, but you get what I'm saying. They always have someone out there in front of the tent saying, come see the bearded lady.
I'm not sure how to make that connection, but the fact you are making me feel good about myself and special is very similar to a travel service that we talk about, Magical Vacation Planner, because they make you feel special. They take care of you. They make you feel like $100. You feel like a VIP. You feel like an MVP when you go to Magical Vacation Planner. And they know their stuff. And they're offering more and more products, cruises, vacation to the Caribbean, theme parks. And they're a great service.
Well, this reminds me, one time Dan said to me, I don't even remember what was going on, but Dan said to me, it's not a competition, but if it was, I won. And here Dan just went at it at the beginning, sneaking in, talking about Magical Vacation Planner on the very beginning. So I applaud that, Dan. If you want to talk to Magical Vacation Planner, you can reach them at 407-442-0257. The one thing I've used MVP for the most in recent years, last 2 years, has been cruises. I'd never been on a cruise until I did, and then it surprised me how much I liked it. So we've been doing some cruising, and Magical Vacation Planner, that's who I call.
They know cruises inside and out. So something I wanted to get into today, Jody, is get back to some meat and potato customer service leadership stuff. And the reason I wanted to talk about this, Valerie and I have been working this into our Method to the Magic Masterclass that we've been doing. And we take participants through sort of A to Z on here's what we learned about how to run a business, and you can adapt it to your business when it comes to creating high intent to return, high intent to recommend, great customer experiences, a great employee culture, and then what leaders need to do all that. And we get into a lot of tactics and a lot of details. And the more we do this, every time we do a masterclass, we take a step back and we say, okay, what worked? What didn't work? How can we improve this? How can we make this stick more? And so I wanted to share a concept with everybody that I call it a mental framework or a model that we're sharing. When you think about your own business, when I say think about your own business, you don't have to own the business to do this. You may run a department. You may have internal customers. If you're HR or payroll, if you're an entrepreneur, obviously you have customers. If you work in a bigger organization, maybe you have a department or a location that you're responsible for. But the idea is, and I like to refer to this as kind of the art and science of customer service. And there's 3 areas that we have been talking about. So the first is, if you are going to run an organization, there has to be a plan. There has to be a design. It has to be architected. You can't just open a business and just sort of tell everyone we're going to sell bagels or we're going to sell widgets or whatever and open the door and start doing it. And a lot of organizations do that. They don't have a plan. They don't look at exactly what they want their customers to hear, to see. They don't have standards and understanding how much maybe waiting on the phone is impacting their business. They don't know about the cleanliness or how clean their business is. The windows are clean. There's all these psychological things that customers use to rate a business when they go there. And Valerie and I were hiking the other day and we were discussing this. And I said, what are some of the businesses that you are loyal to and why? And so she named a bunch of them. She said, well, I like Athleta. I like Banana Republic. I like Ray-Bans. She likes Hoka. And I said, okay, well, a lot of those are just products. It's not really their service that had impacted you and why you buy it. You just like the products. And she said, well, I'll tell you what, Athleta and Banana Republic are 2 organizations I like. Not only do I like their products, but for when I go there, if I try something on and if it doesn't fit, automatically they will say, well, you know what? Let me look up in the inventory system and see if another shop in the area has your size. And then they look it up. And if they do have the size, they say, well, look, either if you'd like to, you can drive over to that shop, or we can get it shipped here to this shop. You can pick it up in a couple of days, or we can ship it to you. Would any of those three options work for you? And if another store doesn't have it in their size in stock, they say, well, look, we have it online. We can ship it to you, or we can let you know when it's back in inventory. And so that doesn't happen by accident. That is a process. And because, Banana Republic and Athleta, they want to sell more merchandise. And they know that if they give you options, even if they don't have the product, they've been trained to come up with these other options. So I would just challenge you in your business, what is the service experience that you want to create? And once you've defined what it is, how are you going to communicate it to your employees? And how are you going to create checklists and processes to make sure it is done over and over and over again? Because Banana Republic and Athleta, they don't have some secret, Kool-Aid you drink. And once you drink it, you know that you're supposed to offer shipping and offer to find the product. That's trained. And they're talking about that all the time because they know that is a key driver for sales. And they know it's a key driver for customer satisfaction. So once again, these designed experiences, what time is the door supposed to be unlocked? How often do the chandeliers get cleaned? How often are you painting the signs? What is the greeting when someone walks into your establishment? If you don't know the answers to those, you haven't designed the experience well enough, because those should not be spontaneous random things. Those should be planned and being able to manage. And when you plan things, they're much easier to take care of than hoping and waiting until someone complains.
One of the things I hear when Dan's talking about this is that type of customer service. If customer service is an art and a science, you can't rely on only hiring good people with good attitudes. Yes, that's going to be part, but it's not a single person delivering this. There's actually a science to it in how it's set up, how it's delivered. And I hear in what you're saying, Dan, there's a consistency to it. It's not, oh, I went in here and Valerie served me really well. It's every time I go in here, no matter who's working, I'm served really well.
Yeah. I guess you could call that culture, because the way we define culture is it's the way things are done around here. And if you as a leader decide how you want things to work, that's A. Do you know what you want? Do you know what you want that service to be like? Well, how do you know what that is? Well, a lot of times it's going to places whose service you love and looking at, what do I love about this? What's great about this experience? What do people appreciate? And once you start to understand that, then you can implement it in your own business. Val and I, years ago, we were in Thailand, in Bangkok, at the Athena. I think it was a Marriott hotel, the Athena Hotel. And I was in the dining room having breakfast, and I needed a cup of coffee. And I was having trouble getting the attention of the server. She was really busy. She was very nice, doing a good job, but she was real busy. And someone from the kitchen walked across the dining room. They had a cook's outfit on, all white with a hat. And she looked into the dining room, and I made eye contact with her and kind of put my finger up. She stopped and she walked over to the table. She said, "Can I help you, sir?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "I was just wanting to get a cup of coffee." And she said, "I'll be right back." And she went to the coffee bar. She was trying to figure out the coffee machine. The server walked up, showed her how to do it, and she brought the coffee back to my table. Now, I was thinking to myself, maybe that was a one-off, because that could have gone in a lot of different ways. Usually how it goes is the cook looks at you and nods and keeps walking, because they're not a server. They work in the kitchen. So why would they get involved in the dining room? That's not their job. Secondly, she could have come to the table and said, "What can I get for you?" And I could say coffee. And she said, I'll let your server know. That's a little better, but still, I'm going to have to wait for that. The third, which she decided to do, was take full ownership and responsibility of this moment and go figure out how to make the coffee and bring it to the table. Now, I know it seems like a little thing, but it's a big deal, because I had that experience 2 or 3 times at the hotel. And what I realized is it wasn't one employee who was just a superstar who was unlike everyone else. I knew training was happening. I knew that her manager, probably the general manager of the hotel, was talking about this every day. When you see a client, when you see a guest that needs help, you take ownership of that. And I don't care what job you have. And if you can do that, we're going to have great service. And here I am talking about it, 3 or 4 years later, because I pay attention to this stuff, but also I thought it was fantastic. And so the question from my point of view is, are you talking about these things? And things as subtle as, when I was working in the resort hotels, we had a real busy check-in. There was a big queue line for check-ins. The cashiers or the front desk employees were taught, go ahead, check in people and make eye contact with people in line and give them a nod. And just that nod tells you, I know you're waiting and we're working as hard as we can. And we're going to take care of you when you get to up to the desk. And just something as simple as that, because when you're waiting, you want to know or think the people who are helping others have a high sense of urgency because you want to get checked into your room. You don't want to have to be waiting. And that little empathetic piece is, I see you're in line. I know you don't want to be in line. I see you. I understand you're there and I'm working on this. It changes the whole dynamic. But someone has to train their employees to do that. And I remember having conversations with employees. I know you don't want to look up because you're going to see all these faces looking at you who don't look very happy and they're really impatient. In fact, if you engage with these customers and let them know you're there, they are going to wait longer and they're not going to have a problem with it because you've given them a little kindness and you've let them know you're there. So these are all very subtle training points. Some of the things you need to do are not so subtle on pure checklists, and other things are going to be behavioral in nature. And what are those little behaviors that make the difference between a great experience and an okay experience? 30, 60 seconds after a server serves food at a table, it's always a great idea to come back and give everyone an opportunity to take one bite, then come back to the table. How is everything? Is it the right temperature? Is it cooked correctly? Is there anything I can get for you? Well, yeah, I need some ketchup, or I need some barbecue sauce, or I need some Tabasco. That's the moment. If you come back 10 minutes later, it's too late. Even if I didn't like this thing, I'm going to keep eating it, or I'm going to sit there and not eat and wait. And then everyone at the table is going to wait for me. So there's a reason a server checks back after everyone takes their first bite. And do you have those kind of standards in your business if you're running a restaurant, for example? And that's the difference between really good organizations and great organizations. The difference is some people go back to very good organizations. Everybody goes back to great organizations. And that is the difference. So it's not the customers complaining when they go to your business. In fact, businesses that have no complaints go out of business all the time because they settled. They settled for okay when they should have been going for great. And they should have been going for these little differentiated, architected behaviors. And it makes all the difference in the world.
Something Dan told me once, and it could have been on this show years ago, that has always stuck with me. And he said that poor and good are treated the same because they're not great. I'd never heard anyone say that before.
Yeah. And a lot of organizations look at that. Well, if no one complained, we must be doing okay. No, you're doing just good enough to not have complaints. But in order to be remarkable, people need to remark upon the product or service you give them. And if they're not remarking on it, if they're not telling a story to others about the experience they had, it's forgettable. And they're going to go someplace else if it's a lower price or it's more convenient. And that's why you have to give them value and give them this way to remember this. Valor and I are doing some work for consulting for a tennis shoe company in Brazil. They have about 450 shops, franchises across the country. And one of their concerns is, how do you compete with the internet? Because boy, internet is low cost. Everything's in a warehouse. You don't have the staffing. You don't have the leasing of the shops. And they really beat us on price. And we said, well, you better beat them on experience and value. And so when someone comes to your store, are you able to measure their feet? And are you able to kind of give them advice on what kind of shoes they should be getting? Or give them advice on these are the best sellers right now. A lot of people, they don't care what tennis shoes they have. They just want to know that it's going to be popular, that when they go out, people are going to go, oh, you got those shoes. And so are you willing and able to tell people that? And if you aren't, there's not going to be a differentiation. They're just going to go on the internet and buy whatever it is. And so you better make that a great experience when people come see you because they have lots of options. And if you just give them an okay experience, then they might come back. If you give them a great experience, their likelihood of coming back and telling a story about how you took care of them goes up dramatically. And that's the difference, once again, between staying in business and going out of business.
All right, Dan, let's say that we've focused on hiring. Our culture's good in that way, that we've got a great atmosphere. We've got great workers, but we've never gone further when it comes to customer service in making it part of a process or a procedure or realizing there's a science behind it. We've taken the approach that if we hire the right people, it'll all work out. It's a good first step for sure. But now we hear you say this and we think, okay, now we have to make process out of it. We have to make it part of what we do. Where do we even begin with that?
Yeah, well, I would say as a leader, you have to create the clarity. You have to design it and tell everyone what you're expecting. And it's a point that's missed so often. Go out and give great service today. Go make people feel good. Well, okay, I don't know what that means. What can I do? And so this idea, and it could be something as simple as get your phone and videotape it. And if I run a tennis shoe franchise shop, maybe I'll go to a competitor and say, hey, this is Dan, everyone. I'm going to so-and-so, our competitor. Let me tell you what I liked about this place and what I didn't, and what worked and what didn't. I walked in the front door, no one greeted me. I sat down, they had comfortable seating. They didn't have machines to measure my foot size. And so we had to spend a while to figure out what my foot size was. They didn't have the inventory in stock. They had this, they didn't have that. So you start out trying to tell yourself what has to be the minimum of an experience. And then once you understand what those things are as a customer and as an expert, then you start writing those down and you create a customer journey, a touch point map. Where are all the touch points a customer is going to have with us? How many times does the phone ring? When I answer the phone, how do I answer it? Do I answer it, hello? Do I answer it, hello, this is Dan? Hello, this is Dan. Thanks for calling Dan's Tennis Shoe Emporium. How can I help you today? Those are 3 responses. They're very different. And if I get that third response all the time, it just tells me this place is organized. They're trained, they care about what's going on, and they're going to take better care of me. So any detail, where do you stand when you're a greeter? If there's 2 of you in the shop, where do you put yourselves? Is there someone that's going to stay up towards the front and someone that's going to stay towards the back to cut down on loss prevention and shoplifting? So all these things have to be defined. And once you define them, you go into training, you go into all these other pieces, but you got to be able to tell a story. Start with a story. People visit Dan's Tennis Shoe Emporium. They come here because we know shoes. We know the brands. We understand technically our shoes. We understand what the hot models are right now. And we're able to give great advice on what the best shoe is going to be for you. That's what the story is. Now, what are all the things I have to do to make sure that happens? And that could be every time a new shoe comes in, everyone gets a piece of paper or they get an email describing what the shoe is, why it's so great. It has a new tread. It has a different support system, so I can sell it. So a lot of this is getting into the details, but you just have to understand as a customer, what is the kind of experience I want to have? And I reproduce that through training and through checklists.
Well, perhaps you've heard Dan talk and say, all right, I'm sure I can do this myself, but maybe I want a little help with it. And I want to talk to someone that, does this for a living. Well, you may want to contact Cockerell Consulting. Dan, how can they do that?
Yeah, reach out, Dan at cockerellconsulting.com. You can go to our website, cockerellconsulting.com. Our phone numbers are on there, and we're always willing to chat and see what's on people's minds and how we can help out. And if we don't have the skill sets, we know lots of people who do. I worked with a legal office, a law firm, a year and a half ago. I didn't have the skill set to do some industrial engineering and process work. And so I found someone that this company was able to use. So we're problem solvers. And if we can help you solve a problem, let us know.
All right, there you have it. Thank you so much, Dan. And thank you for listening to Come Rain or Shine.